Welcome to another episode of Corporate CPR, where we breathe life back into your organization, projects, and processes, giving you insights to recovery and avoiding corporate mortality events. Joining us today is Carine Schneider. Carine is president of AST Private Company Solutions, the creator of Estrella. Estrella is a private company ownership tracking self-serve software to help companies global communicate, model, and manage share ownership. She also recently wrote a book, The I'm not going to be able to say it.
Yep, the democracy of the private market.
Okay, you say it. Let's hear about your book.
Democratization of the private market.
It's funny. There's those few words that when you see them written, that all of a sudden you can say it normally, but not once it's written. So.
I know. I have that problem too.
Well, welcome. So yeah, tell us a little bit about your book. Tell us a little bit about you, and I'd love to hear about it.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm Carine Schneider. So I run a division of AST. AST is one of the two largest transfer agents in North America. So on the public company side, shares have to, if you're buying or selling stock in a public company, they have to transfer through a transfer agent. So we're owned by AST. And what we focus on in our group is only working with privately held companies. So these are companies that are not on NASDAQ or on New York Stock Exchange. There's millions and millions of private companies, and they're owned by somebody, and someone has to keep track of who owns the company. So in some cases, it could be a butcher shop and it's one person who owns it. That's pretty simple. But a lot of companies have different people who have invested money at different times. They own different parts of the company. There might be employees who work at that company who've been promised some stock in the future, and someone has to keep track of all of that and then make sure that everyone understands what their personal ownership is. And then there's always, someone wants to buy your business. So what if we sold, and how much money would everybody get? And that's really what Estrella does for tiny companies all the way up to very large privately held companies.
That's fantastic. And when was your book released?
It's technically released next week. This is it. It's coming out. It's on Amazon, and it's about really talking about the fact that there's this private market out there where you can buy and sell stock in a private company, but it is not as simple as going and calling Schwab or Fidelity and saying, hey, I want to buy some Apple stock. It's much more complicated and much more expensive than that. So it talks about how do we start to change things, especially with technology today. How do we allow technology to help us make this easier, less expensive, and how can we get more people to participate in this private market?
So is blockchain a component of that? And if so, let's first define blockchain and then tell me how that fits together.
Yeah. So blockchain is a very important part of it. It's something that we have built into Estrella because we so believe that blockchain is important when you're managing this kind of data. So just to level set, what is blockchain? Now, people hear blockchain, they hear cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, and they kind of all mesh it together. And that's actually not the way to look at this. Blockchain is a type of technology that allows you to manage information in an immutable way. So the word immutable really means it can't be changed. And the way database management software works is that if I type in that you own 2 million shares, and then tomorrow I type in that you own 50 shares, that information about the fact that yesterday you owned 2 million and today you own 50, all I'll see is 50. I'll never really know that you one time owned 2 million shares. So it's very easy to make mistakes, and it's very easy to not understand what the history was. So what blockchain does is it allows you to manage this digital record, and it never goes away. So there is a trail. We call it the genealogy of a share in Estrella, meaning I can really follow the history of exactly who owned the stock, when did they sell it, who did they sell it to, how much did they sell it for. All of that information is there. And that becomes really important when you're selling your company or when you're going public. And blockchain is really the key to all of that. And we are the only provider of this type of software that actually employs blockchain. Everybody else is still using the old database software.
So I guess, is that going to become more? Maybe I've heard a little bit about using then blockchain to track ownership within fine art and things like that to understand how art is getting transferred from owner to owner. Is that?
Exactly. Yeah, a
Mm.
good example I heard the other day was using blockchain in our food system. So if you think about it, when you buy a head of lettuce at the store, you don't really know where that lettuce came from. And everybody's, oh, we're having a problem with lettuce, and you sit there with your head of lettuce going, I bought it at Safeway. I don't know what else. Well, what blockchain can do is it can track throughout the process. Well, where was the lettuce grown, and who picked it, and what truck did it go into, and what box was it in, and what store was it sold to? And so you'll have all that information. Again, I use the word immutable a lot. It can't be changed. And so if you have to go back and say, well, in the supply chain, where exactly was this? Blockchain can help you with that information. And so it's going to be really powerful. And I think it's going to be in 5 years, it's going to be so prevalent in our world that the idea of the old database style of keeping track of things, which is whatever information is there today is the last thing I can remember, is going to be gone. We're going to want to know, where did this stuff come from, and who owned it before, and when did the transfer happen, and that's what this technology really can do.
So, within the marijuana industry, like they've obviously done a lot of tracking where they can track it from the pod all the
Exactly.
way to the store. And so I think that uses like RFID chips and things like that. So is that the data from the RFID chip gets captured and then blockchain rather than a database?
It
Is
could
that
be, yes, yeah. I mean, it really depends, obviously, on the provider and what technology they're using. But the idea is that you would scan something like the head of lettuce, or the cannabis plant or whatever. You would scan something, and that information would then be stored in the blockchain, and it would be there forever. So as it goes through its journey, you're able to keep scanning and knowing exactly where it is. So think about suitcases on an airplane, or think about packages that are being mailed out there. This whole process of knowing something is really important, and that's the concept behind it. I think the difference that blockchain brings is that you can make it public if you want. In our product, it's private, meaning only the company can see this information, but you could make it public in such a way, and this is something we talk about in the book. If you think about it, in a public stock market, I go and buy some Apple stock through my broker, and that stock just goes into my name. I don't really care who owned it yesterday. It's irrelevant to me. I just know I own it today, and it's in my brokerage account. But in the private market, being able to transfer the ownership of these shares via the blockchain in a public setting could be very powerful for companies who choose to register their securities on a blockchain and then allow other people to come in and buy and sell those shares. Where today it might take 2 months to transfer ownership and be paid and do all of this work, and lots of manual agreements that need to be signed. What blockchain could potentially bring is the ability to log into something, purchase those private securities, and transfer the ownership real time.
Hmm. Some things I guess that come to mind is like you could use it for titles on a house, contracts. Obviously, the legal, industry could be significantly revolutionized by that. Seeing all the iterations of a contract and having that stored. But when you think of your everyday companies, whether it's retail or maybe healthcare, aerospace, whatever. What do you think is going to become the most kind of revolutionizing thing? Is there going to kind of like the database or big data or business intelligence? All of those things kind of permeated all industries, and it sounds like this will as well. Where do you think we might start seeing a lot of that in a company?
Yeah, and again, I think every industry is looking at it. If you look at the big four and the big banks, and I mean, they all have blockchain people studying this. So finance is very much looking at how blockchain can help move things. I'll give an example. If you think about currency today, if I want to send some currency to someone in Japan, I have to go to the bank and then I have to convert from dollars to yen and I have to do all of that. So where Bitcoin is helpful in the blockchain is that I could potentially send somebody the money real time, and I can send you 10 Bitcoins and you'll get it 3 seconds from now, and I'm done. I don't have to go to a bank. I don't have to go anywhere. So the financial institutions are looking at this. How not only blockchain but also Bitcoin. I think the food system is really looking at this because that whole supply chain is just not. There's a lot of areas where they need to know what's going on. Certainly in the drug delivery business, that's important.
All that.
You
Let's keep track of that oxy and where that's going.
Exactly. What pharmacy sold it, and what bottle was it in, and you could have oxy from 5 different manufacturers, and so it's that all the way to like the entertainment business. Being able to pay musicians for their song. The song just played on YouTube. How do we get that person their money? So I think what blockchain does is it brings some kind of there's a public side to it, which is in certain situations really great. And again, I want to emphasize, we do not use a public blockchain, but it's the technology is there. And it's in a place where you're moving things. Something's going from one place to another. That's where blockchain is going to come in really handy.
Would be curious then, I guess, when you're talking about things playing on YouTube and going to, getting the artist getting their royalties or something like that. Like, how would that end up working? I guess that to me is a huge jump, and I'm having a hard time crossing the chasm there. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I know of some companies that are working on revolutionizing that. So today, YouTube has to say, okay, we played your song that you wrote, and it's November 4th, and we played it, and it was played 5 times, and so you get $1 every time. So we have to give you $5, and we got to find you, and we got to get it over to you. And all of that movement can take months and months and months. So what the pandemic actually brought to light, as I was talking to the folks who are behind this company that's building the technology to do all this, is that a lot of musicians were really starving because they couldn't go out and do concerts, and we couldn't sell merchandise at their concerts. And so the only thing that they could survive on were the royalties of their songs. And YouTube a lot of times will not allow you to play a clip from a song if you can't make sure that you're paying the musician. So there's this kind of disconnect where these people are saying, play my song all day long, just pay me. And YouTube saying, we don't know how to pay you. So what again, blockchain can do is manage all of that information. And in a public way, they could say, anyone who is playing Carine Schneider's song, it needs to go in here. And then I see that it was played in 5 different places by Spotify, Apple, all these different things. And I can see, okay, I'm owed $5. And then everybody sends $1 and the $5 comes to me. And potentially that could come to me via Bitcoin. If I'm living somewhere else in the world, maybe I'm on a beach in Indonesia, I'm going to say, I don't want $5. I actually want a Bitcoin, and I'll go, convert that into whatever I'm going to convert it in. So the work that's being done, and again, these are clients of ours who are using our technology to manage their ownership. It's fascinating to see how they're employing all of this. And so I would say in 5 or 10 years, anybody who has a time problem, meaning it takes us a long time to process something, or it takes us a long time to kind of move a piece of paper from point A to B, blockchain is really going to help with that.
Oh man, I hope you can reduce the time it takes to buy a house. There's
some companies out there doing that. Yep.
Yeah, because that process to me just seems so ridiculous sometimes. Yeah. You mentioned Bitcoin, and I know this is a kind of an iteration because crypto is built with blockchain. But one of the things that I've learned about cryptocurrency is that maybe it's a little misleading in its naming, in that it's not all just currency, right? Some of these cryptocurrencies actually have other functions. Is that?
Yeah, and I'm not, the foremost expert on this, but here's an analogy that I used with my mom to help her understand it. So when you look at, if I take a photo of you on my phone, it's a digital asset, right? It's a picture of you. Now I can go and send that picture of you to 20 different people, and it's the exact same photo. So it doesn't really have a lot of value. But if it were a digital asset that was logged on a blockchain, I can only send it to one person. So that's what the NFTs are about. And that's what, the digital assets are all about. And that's why with equity, you can only have one share of stock. You can't go then multiply it and suddenly you have 100 shares of stock, because then no one owns anything. So the idea, if you go back to the photo, is if I only can have one, then if I give it to you, I don't own it anymore. I don't possess it anymore. You now possess it. The one photo I took of you. So it could be like artwork or other things. And so in a blockchain, I can now take it from me owning that digital asset to you owning that digital asset. And you can decide whether you want to sell it. So the value of that is similar if you think about a Picasso, right? There's only one. And of course, there's people who are going to say, well, there's fakes, and people, made posters of a Picasso. And sure, you can do all of that with an NFT, or you could do that with any asset. But the actual owner of that digital asset would be registered in the blockchain as being Carine Schneider owns this picture of you. No, that there will never be another picture like this. And the only way for me to pass it along is to register it in the blockchain that I'm no longer the owner and the new person is the owner.
Let's take a moment and define NFT. It's a non-fungible token, is what it
Right.
sounds like, right? So
Right.
can you, because not everybody may be familiar with that. So can you describe that a little bit?
Yeah, it's just very similar to what I just said. So let's say that there's a photo, and a lot of sports people are doing this right now, and actors and musicians and stuff like that. So if I have a meme, or I have a photo, or I have an experience or something that I can digitize. So it's not like a shoe in my hands. It's not, Michael Jordan's shoe. But let's say Michael Jordan takes a picture of something and he says, I am going to put this on the blockchain and make it a non-fungible token. And I'm going to sell this picture of me. And there will never be another one of this. And whoever buys it now owns it, and they can choose to sell it to someone else. That's what a non-fungible token will do. So
Yeah.
you could argue, well, but can't I just take a picture of the screen and then I get the same picture of you? And you could say, yeah. And so there critics out there who say, how valuable is this thing really? So we'll see. This is very early days, but you look at people like Tom Brady and folks like that. They're all jumping into the NFT business, and they're trying to come up with digital assets that they can create that'll be unique and special to them, that will have value.
Yeah, and I guess then there will be a whole slew of products, because here, if I'm buying a picture or something that's digital, I might want to actually view it. So they're like on a wall, because what value is there to me if I can't display it,
Right.
certain things. So I assume then there'd be a whole slew of new products that come out to support then those NFTs.
And then there's the authenticity, right? So if you come to my house and I've also displayed the same photo, you're going to be like, hey, wait a minute. I own that. How did you, get that photo? So, and then I could say, well, I own it. And you could say, well, yeah, I own it. And we might have an issue. So the whole authenticity and following again, that genealogy of where did it come from, who bought it, who sold it to whom, all of that is being created. And those are some of these companies that are starting now to manage the NFT process.
Another example I've heard is like using it almost like a loyalty program, where you buy into a company's loyalty, and maybe there'll be a thing where you can scan it or something when you show up at a mall, and then maybe they have partnerships with other companies who will give you discounts because you're the loyalty member or something. I've
Right.
heard it in that example. It's really fascinating, because I guess there's so many directions that things could go. So, kind of what we talk about here is, when there are trends out there, some trends fade away. This is not a trend that's going to fade away. So what are some of the things that maybe you guys are telling your clients, or that you would just tell companies about? What do they need to do? What do they need to be looking at so they don't fall behind?
Yeah. Well, I think anybody who's not looking at how blockchain could impact their business delivery is woefully behind. You need to look at it because your competitors are looking at it and they're trying to figure it out. I think the other two themes that we have in our software that I think are really important, one is artificial intelligence. I think is just building that into your products is going to be key, and whether that's into your sales process, your marketing process, the actual product itself. I think you need to have the ability to make things easier. And again, double-edged sword. All this stuff, there are critics, there are reasons not to do it, but I think if you don't have someone at your company who is tasked to look at this strategically, you need to go and find the right person and add them to your team, because this is something you need to understand. And artificial intelligence isn't like in a lab anymore with guys in white coats, trying to figure this out. This is everywhere there. It's so pervasive. And from a marketing perspective, everyone has to market whatever they're doing. So whether you're a law firm or the butcher, or, you just started a software company yesterday, you have to understand this. And the third thing I'd say is predictive analytics. And so people are expecting products and services now to tell them more things. So, an example in our software is we in the old days, like 10 years ago, you would just put data into a system. And then when you needed to look at the data, you would go look at it. And when you needed to understand what the data said, you'd have somebody download it into a spreadsheet and do some analysis. And that's why, there's analysts at, all these financial institutions, hundreds and thousands of people who are analysts, because all they were doing was crunching data. Nowadays, people expect that these systems are intelligent enough to come and tell you when there's a problem. So the example I always give is, when you start your car in the morning, you expect the car to tell you your tires are low, you don't have enough gas, the oil needs something. You don't go run around, check all four tires and, check your oil. You expect the car to tell you that. Well, more and more products, people expect the products to tell them these things too. The food's expired, or, this is, I don't know, this has gotten wet, or whatever it is. And so this two-way communication is also really important. So I think this is something that companies need to look at in terms of their products and services, and how they can interact with this kind of a concept, and where they can have their customers feel that they're a partner with the customer, that the customer is getting value by using their products and service, because they're being alerted to something that they might not have thought to either even ask, or didn't realize it was a problem.
Mm. You mentioned that there's some people out there who are naysayers, or maybe kind of looking at this skeptically. What are some of those concerns come up that?
Yeah. Well, on blockchain, they're worried about hacking. And hey, you can hack anything today, and we live with it every day. So unless you want to go live in a cave and never talk to anybody else, the cybersecurity and hacking is a reality. Secondly, on the artificial intelligence, there's a lot of concern about, what is happening with the artificial intelligence, who's using it, how are they using it. It's kind of coupled with data. Data is really the new gold of our world today. And I think predictive analytics, I think people are concerned that it might tell you things about people and their privacy, that people will not want you to know, that these things are happening. Again, we are sitting on so much data in this world today that everyone's analyzing it. The question is, are you feeding it to your client, or are you waiting for your client to come and ask you? So those, I would say, would be the kind of negative or critical side of things.
And that was kind of a question I wrote down about, do we have too much data? When you were talking about, like, with stocks, like if you were thinking of a public company and every person who's ever owned a piece of stock. I mean, obviously the SEC might care about that if they're doing an investigation, but is there a point where some of this, there's just too much data out there that we don't use it effectively then?
Yeah. I'd like to, I think that cat's out of the bag. There is just so much data, and it is all being stored and analyzed. I think there's a lot of positive ways to use the data. And I think 10 years from now, we're going to look back at this time and say, geez, how did we make any decisions when we didn't really have a full story of what was happening? So, in your example, you used, if you knew that there were investors in your public company who only held the stock for, less than a day. And then you had investors who held it for months and months, they were long-term owners, you would react to those people very differently. So I think all this data that we're getting, we're still trying to figure out what's the best use of it. There is also data overload where people just say, gosh, I don't even know how to absorb everything that you're telling me. It's just way too much. I don't even know where to start. So the companies that are really helping manage the data will, those that do it well and can digest it for you and present to you what it is you really need to know. Those are the ones that are going to win in the end. But I think if you talk to any kind of economist or futurist or anybody like that, they will tell you that that the data is out there and it's just what people are doing with it. You can't stop it anymore. It's just not possible.
And you were talking about like what companies can do. What should individuals be doing, do you think, to be educated maybe, or to understand the risks, things like that? What would your advice for that be?
Yeah, and I think it's one of these things that can keep you up at night and drive you crazy if you spend too much time thinking about it. I have friends who absolutely won't put anything on social media because they think that they want to protect themselves. I do things on, there's certain things I'll do on social media and certain things I won't do. Things like I don't publish my birthday, so I'm always getting random, happy birthday from people. And I'm like, well, it's not my birthday, but oh, that's right. On that, I didn't put my real birthday because I had to give you a birthday, but I'm not giving you my real one. So I do think there's things that you can do to be smart about it. I do think you have to come to an acceptance, though, that with the way the world is working now, that this is a reality that you have to be comfortable with. Obviously, you do have to be diligent, and I'm not telling you anything that you haven't heard before. You have to manage your privacy carefully. And I do think that children, this is an area that I think, we talk about kids shouldn't be on computers and everything. I mean, 18-month-olds, are on the iPad and doing all of this. I think this is where we need to be a little bit more focused, is to ensure that if you have children, that you're really talking to them and you're setting up the correct settings, because they have the ability to share a tremendous amount of data from your devices that you're letting them use. So that would be one area of caution I would have.
Yeah, that's interesting, because I think I have a daughter, and when she was born, it was a lot of like, oh, keep them off the device, keep them off the device. But it's coming to the point where it doesn't make sense. Like that made sense because we didn't have devices when we were kids, and so yeah, you can wait till you're 18. And I remember my brother, whose kids are older, when his daughter was 10, he was thinking about getting her cell phone. I'm like, why would you do that?
Mm-hmm.
Like, like she doesn't need a cell phone. And
Right.
then when your own kids get to that age, you start seeing, well, it's a different world. And how do I balance, what things I'm allowing them to have access to, and not just doing things because that's the way it was done.
Exactly.
So it's an
Exactly.
interesting problem.
Yeah, and it is powerful. I mean, I had a friend of mine who said, I don't know, something came up, and oh, I got a package from Amazon from her, and I'm like, well, what is this? And she's like, oh, my 2-year-old ordered that by mistake, and I'm like, wait, your 2-year-old is on your Amazon account, like, could order something? She's like, oh, she loves buying whatever, a book or something for herself, and I thought, well, that's a really dangerous thing to do. So I do think, with things like financial stuff and talking to other people, we're going to have to, I think we kind of been lulled a little bit in, oh, the cell phone is so that they can call me if they get lost on their way home from school. Right. And it's like, no, it's a bit more than that.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Well, and it was interesting that you brought up social media though, as well, because, I didn't think about if like the social media ended up on blockchain. Obviously right now we have the ability to delete things, and supposedly in the company's privacy policy, they eventually delete them too out of their databases.
Yeah.
And so you think about these things where, you might have been a silly college age student and put up something that years later you're running for president or something, and you don't want that to come out. And if it's permanently etched somewhere, it might be. So like having that, you're going to have a longer term perspective really early in life, when maybe we don't understand long-term impacts.
Right. One of my first jobs, there was a great lawyer who worked there, and he was teaching us a bunch of stuff. And he said, never write an email that you wouldn't be willing to read out loud in a court of law with your mother sitting in the front row.
Mm.
And that was a really good lesson for me because, that stuff stays there forever. And you could say, that was obviously pre Facebook and Instagram and everything, never post something that you don't want your mom to see because, she may see it. And so, and I find that, people this age, and I've got, two 20-year-old, two people in their 20s as my children, a lesson I'm constantly telling them. But you're right, with blockchain, it becomes immutable. The thing about blockchain and social media is I think those social media companies are already keeping all of that stuff. So I'm not sure blockchain will make a big difference there.
Mm.
But for things like financial transactions, so, if you go to the liquor store every day and you're buying a bottle of wine and they're keeping track of that, and a year from now they go back and go, wow, every day you came in here and bought a bottle of wine. If that were in blockchain, they would have all that data. It's not to say they don't have the data of how many people are walking in here and buying a bottle of wine, but they could see, oh, Carine Schneider came in here and bought a bottle of wine every day at 4 o'clock. This is the wine she bought, and that information might be available to other people. I might not want that.
And that's the key. It's who has that information, because if somebody really want to investigate it, they could run your credit card number in their system and figure it out or something like that. But you're making it, I guess, in a way that could be digested. Like, what are your buying habits? And then now I might be able to market to you in a different way, or sell that information to a complementary organization, and that could be out there, and like you said, in ways that you don't want. Like, I was thinking about when you were talking about the stock, I'm like, I don't know that I want like everybody to know every stock I've ever bought or and traded. I mean, not that it just feels personal. It's obviously nothing to hide, but it just feels very personal, like
right.
what stock you own. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting what privacy challenges come out of it, and what new laws, I guess, would have to support that.
Yeah. And again, that data is there. So it's not like this is brand new with blockchain. I think what blockchain is doing is it's making it a lot easier to see it. And not having to do all the hard, like you said, someone could go and research all of that. Sure. How long is that going to take? With blockchain, you just, you bring it right up and you can just see it. Like in our system, you literally, in 3 seconds, you can see everybody that owned that stock without any effort.
Right.
And that's important for these companies as they're managing this information. But we've made it a lot easier than in the old days when someone would come in with a piece of paper and say, I own 2 million shares. And we'd say, no, you don't. Well, that'd take me 4 months and I'd have to hire some lawyers and some accountants. And is it really worth the money? I don't know. Maybe I don't want to spend it. Now with blockchain, I can tell you in 3 seconds, here's what happened. Here's who you sold it to.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, because I can't remember, somebody in my family passed away and found a whole bunch of stock, and it takes time to research, like, do they still, because it was a certificate, do they still truly own that or not? And in this case, no, they didn't. Not millionaires all of a sudden. When you think about companies who maybe like ignoring this as a trend and stuff, I guess what some of the things they might end up like backfiring if they don't get on board is maybe people feeling like more secure with somebody else, like maybe they become less trusted and less confident in that company's data. Are there other things that could come to mind, I guess, when if people don't get on board, what the perception might be or what might impact them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all around the same thing, which is, the Iceman and the refrigerator, right? When the refrigerator person came out and the Iceman said, oh, everyone will keep using ice, I'm not worried. And then the refrigerator put the Iceman out of business. It's the same thing. If I go back to my head of lettuce, if I'm at the store and I can know where this head of lettuce came here, and over here is a head of lettuce that I don't know anything about, which one am I going to buy? And it's a little bit like organic, although, the organic, non-organic argument is, how do I really know this head of lettuce was actually raised in an organic setting? I have to have to trust. Like I think about our milk, it says organic milk. How do I know it's really organic? With blockchain, though, there could be a way where I could walk up maybe with my cell phone and I could say, where was this head of lettuce picked? Oh, I see. It was picked in Salinas. Oh, 3 weeks ago. Okay. I don't think I want to buy this head of lettuce. Let me go over here with my cell phone. And this one was picked, down the street 2 days ago. I think I'm going to go with that one. So, giving the consumer more information is going to impact their buying habits. And this is the kind of stuff where if you're growing lettuce in the Central Valley of California, you may not be thinking about blockchain right now, but this is the type of stuff that could impact your business long term.
Well, and that's interesting as well, because I guess that's gonna, that's gonna make technology become even more of a possible divider. But like the critical, it's going to be a critical element in every industry, and so companies are going to have to put investment in there. I mean, more and more companies need to invest in technology and quit making it this thing on the side where I have computer or I have a telephone or I have whatever, but central to their strategy, to their market go to market.
And that's rough on small companies. I get that. How do you compete? And so I'm sure the lettuce growers who are big corporations who can afford to hire consultants and people to come in, this is going to be stuff that they're going to quickly implement. And those small mom and pop farmers who, they don't even understand the technology. This is going to be hard. But as with all technical advancements, there are going to be people who are going to be victims left on the side of the road who aren't going to be able to keep up. And we as consumers are going to demand these types of things once we see the value of them. And that we're in the early days of that. That's still to come.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, Carine, this has been a lot of valuable information. And in closing, are there 3 takeaways either that you've already mentioned that you want to re-highlight or add to the conversation really around corporations and the trend with blockchain?
Yeah. Well, as I said, I really think you need to understand how blockchain could impact and improve your particular business or service. Even if you're, let's say, a dentist, figure it out. There's got to be articles out there. Google it. See what other people are doing. So I would certainly encourage that. And I think the other thing is just to keep in mind the other 2 things I mentioned, artificial intelligence and predictive analytics. They're really important. And as you're running a business or growing a business, understand what it is and how it's going to impact what you do to make sure you're not left behind. And I know it's kind of repetitive, but I just can't encourage people enough to do that. And finally, I got to say, track your ownership. That's what we do with Estrella. If you're less than 10 shareholders, it's free of charge. You can go to estrella.com and you can start to track who owns your company. It's really important. It's probably the most valuable thing you own in your world is whatever business you've built. So why would you not track it in a responsible way? And that's something I really want to encourage people to do.
So estrella.com for company ownership, Amazon for your book. Any other places where people can connect or learn more?
Well, I'm on Twitter, so you're welcome to follow me, Carine Schneider. Pretty simple, Carine. And love to hear from people. At estrella.com, we have an ebook that if you're building a new company and you really don't know what you're doing or you got a lot of questions, download our free ebook. It'll teach you a lot about how to build a company, whether you're 2 people or whether you're 2,000. It's a great lesson and a helpful book.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And to our audience, keep your organizations healthy. Until next time.